Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where we learn about historic architecture. I've been working on a new logo and this is what I have so far, so let me know in the comments if you liked it. If you remember from last time, we looked at the pines and it had an interior colonnade, which is this feature. So I wanted to put together a video that gives you an introduction to the colonnade. Colonnades were built in the United States in houses. In the early 20th century, they're often associated with the American four-square style, although they do appear in other types of houses. They appeared in millwork catalogs first in 1910, although they could have been in production slightly before that. And they continued to appear in millwork catalogs until 1937. So during this 27 years, millwork catalogs offered 6 varieties of colonnades, and they had different time periods for each one of them that I'd like to go through here with you. But one thing that's important is most of the experimentation with colonnades happened up until about 1923. After that, fewer and fewer millwork companies carried colonnades in their lines. So if you have a colonnade from the later period, it's probably going to be relatively rare. Most colonnades would date to the period about 1915 to 1925. The reason colonnades are important is that they represent the very first step in the direction of having houses designed with an open concept interior plan. These are semi-open walls that allowed somebody, like a parent, to be in one room and watch what their children were doing in the adjacent room. The first millwork catalog to carry a colonnade was the Chicago and Riverdale catalog of 1910, which you see here. And I'm showing you one of the 2 pages of sample colonnades that they carried that year. The first kind of colonnade that was carried was called the Pedestal colonnade, which is what we see here. And the important thing here is that the solid piece below the column is what's called the pedestal. The pedestal colonnade, because it's the most common of all the types of colonnades, is a good introduction to the other ones. And one of the things that you need to keep in mind is that the type of column can differ wildly. This 2-page spread from a 1911 catalog shows some of the options that you had with colonnades. You could get Tuscan columns, Doric columns, or Ionic columns. And you also had the option of getting simple columns that were square or round, or you could get pilasters. Here's a comparison of a colonnade from 1920 on the right and the final millwork catalog's depiction of a colonnade on the left. And you can see that throughout this time, the design really did not change very much. There were some minor changes as to how the panel and the pedestal looked. I'm not showing you all these changes because they were fairly minimal. The design of the pedestal colonnade was just static. The second type of colonnade was the Grille colonnade, which was produced during the years 1910 to 1926. However, it was mostly phased out after 1915, and it only appeared in 2 catalogs in the 1920s that were both from the same company. The Grille colonnade came in 2 versions. One of them, which you see on the left, had ironwork up at the top that was perforated so that you could see through it. The other type used fretwork up at the top as sort of a spandrel over the columns. The third type of colonnade was called the column colonnade. And the important thing about these colonnades is that the column came all the way down to the floor level. There was no pedestal. Most of them did not have the kind of decorative casing that you see in this particular example. Here are 2 more from the 19-teens, and you can see that the one on the right has this interesting diagram in the middle that shows how the round column comes together. It's a bunch of staves that you can put together to create the column. The fourth of the 6 types of colonnades is called the bookcase colonnade. What you need to know about this is that it had these storage areas with shelves on the inside that were accessed by doors. Usually had big panes of glass in them so that you could see what was inside. These were marketed for you to store either books or to store your china for your dining room. These became really common and were in fact the second most common of all of the colonnades. And one of the things that you always see with these are these stubby columns on the top that sit over the storage areas. The earliest versions of these bookcase colonnades had what was called art glass that was shown inside of the doors, accessing the storage areas, and sometimes in the columns. Here we see some other examples, one from 1915, the 2 of them, and then the one on the left is from 1920. They just give you a sense of how these types of bookcase colonnades were marketed. The 5th of the 6 type of colonnades is called the desk colonnade, and these were made at a time period when most people didn't have a desk at home. So this way they would have a piece of furniture that would be incorporated into the colonnade. When the flap of the desk was closed, it looked like it was just part of paneling that was part of the colonnade and not a piece of furniture. The desk colonnade, like most of the other ones, was not really that common after 1923, and especially beginning with 1926 until it was last produced in 31, it was only offered by one millwork company. The final type of colonnade is called the bench colonnade, which was only offered for a very limited number of years and is the most rare of all of the types of colonnade. And the only thing that you really need to know about it is that it has this built-in bench in front of it. Okay, those were the 6 major types of colonnades that were produced in the United States in the early 20th century. I've tried to keep this short because I know this is probably not really high on most people's level of interest, but this is the kind of thing that we do see often when we're trying to document historic houses, so we need to know what these things are. So thanks again. I hope any of you, if you're still watching this, that you'll hit the like button and also subscribe, and have a great day.